The friendship between Donald Trump and Jesse Waters was supposed to be unbreakable, a bond forged in the fires of political warfare and strengthened by years of mutual loyalty. For nearly a decade, the Fox News primetime host had been Trump's most reliable defender, turning his show into a nightly celebration of everything Trump represented. But on the evening of October 23rd, 2025, that friendship would explode in the most spectacular betrayal in cable news history. What started as a routine interview about Trump's 2028 campaign plans would end with the most explosive social media meltdown ever posted by a former president. Because hidden from Trump's view, Jesse Waters had spent the previous 6 months secretly recording their private conversations, documenting Trump's most unhinged moments, and preparing for the ultimate backstab that would destroy their relationship forever. And when Trump discovered what his loyal friend had been planning, his rage would consume everything in its path, culminating in a Truth Social post so devastating it would end Waters' career and change the landscape of conservative media forever. The relationship between Donald Trump and Jesse Waters had always been built on mutual benefit rather than genuine friendship, though neither man would have admitted it at the time. For Trump, Waters represented the perfect media ally: young, aggressive, unquestioningly loyal, and willing to defend even his most controversial statements with theatrical enthusiasm. For Waters, Trump was the golden ticket to primetime success, a guaranteed ratings boost who could transform any slow news day into appointment television. Their alliance had begun in 2016 when Waters was still a correspondent for the O'Reilly Factor, conducting his signature Waters World segments that ambushed unsuspecting people on the street with loaded political questions. Trump had immediately recognized Waters' talent for making Democrats look foolish and had begun granting him exclusive interviews and behind-the-scenes access that other Fox personalities envied. When Bill O'Reilly's career imploded in sexual harassment scandals, Waters had stepped into the primetime void with Trump's enthusiastic endorsement. Jesse Waters is a star. Trump had tweeted in 2017, "Very smart, very fair, and knows how to handle the fake news media better than anyone. His show will be huge." The prediction had proven accurate. Jesse Waters' Primetime had become one of Fox News' highest-rated programs, driven largely by Waters' willingness to echo and amplify Trump's message with unwavering dedication. Night after night, Waters would defend Trump's policies, attack his critics, and provide a platform for the former president's political agenda. Their personal relationship had deepened over the years, with Trump treating Waters almost like a son, the kind of media-savvy offspring he wished his own children could be. They spoke regularly by phone, often for hours at a time, with Trump sharing his unfiltered thoughts about politics, the media, and his plans for the future. But by early 2025, cracks were beginning to show in their relationship. Trump's legal troubles were mounting, his political prospects were dimming, and his behavior was becoming increasingly erratic. More importantly for Waters, defending Trump was becoming a liability rather than an asset as the conservative movement began looking toward younger, less controversial leaders. The breaking point had come in March 2025, during a private dinner at Mar-a-Lago where Trump had launched into one of his most unhinged rants yet, making statements so extreme that even Waters had been shocked. That night, Waters had made the decision that would ultimately destroy their friendship. He began secretly recording their conversations. The plan was simple but devastating. Waters would continue playing the role of loyal ally, while secretly documenting Trump's most compromising statements. When the time was right, he would use those recordings to position himself as the reasonable conservative voice who had finally had enough of Trump's extremism. Over the following months, Waters had amassed a collection of recordings that revealed Trump at his absolute worst, discussing plans to primary Republican senators who opposed him, floating conspiracy theories that made QAnon seem mainstream, and making statements about political violence that would shock even his most devoted supporters. The October 23rd interview was supposed to be routine promotion for Trump's nascent 2028 campaign. Waters had invited him on the show to discuss his policy platform and build momentum for the primary fight ahead. Trump had arrived at the Fox News studios in his typical good mood, energized by the prospect of friendly media coverage and confident in his host's continued loyalty. What he didn't know was that this interview would be his last as Jesse Waters' friend. The show began normally enough, with Waters delivering his standard opening monologue praising Trump's vision for America and attacking the radical left Democrats who opposed him. Trump sat comfortably in the guest chair, his familiar orange glow enhanced by the studio lighting, ready to deliver his well-rehearsed talking points about making America great again. Mr. President, Waters began, his voice carrying its usual tone of deferential respect. You've been talking a lot about running again in 2028. What's your message to Americans who might be wondering if it's time for new leadership in the Republican Party? It was a softball question, the kind of gentle setup that Waters had been providing for years. Trump launched into his standard response about being the only person who could save America from the radical left, his voice rising with familiar passion as he outlined his grievances against the political establishment. But something in Waters' demeanor was different. His usual nodding and encouraging expressions were replaced by a more neutral, almost clinical observation of Trump's performance. Viewers might not have noticed the change, but Trump's political instincts were sharp enough to sense that something was off. Jesse, Trump said, pausing mid-sentence, you seem distracted tonight. Everything okay? Waters smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Of course, Mr. President. I'm just fascinated by your perspective on leadership. You've had some interesting thoughts about that topic in our private conversations. The comment was loaded with subtext that Trump didn't immediately understand. But Waters was laying the groundwork for what was coming next, planting seeds that would bloom into devastating revelations. Well, Trump replied, somewhat confused by the direction of the conversation, leadership is about strength, Jesse. It's about being willing to do whatever it takes to win. Sometimes that means making tough decisions that weak people don't understand, like primarying Republicans who don't support you. Waters asked, his tone still friendly, but with an edge that hadn't been there before. Trump's eyes narrowed slightly. This wasn't the kind of question he expected from his most loyal media ally, but he decided to push forward with his standard talking points. Republicans who betray the movement deserve to be replaced, he said. The people want fighters, not establishment weaklings who cave to the Democrats every time there's pressure. Waters nodded slowly, as if processing this information for the first time. But in reality, he was preparing to deploy one of his secret recordings. That's interesting, Waters said, because in our conversation last month, you were much more specific about your plans for dealing with disloyal Republicans. Should we share that with our viewers? The question hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Trump's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, recognition, and finally dawning horror as he realized what Waters was implying. Jesse, Trump said carefully, I'm not sure what you're referring to. Waters reached for a small device on his desk, a digital recorder that Trump now noticed for the first time. The sight of it sent a chill through the former president as he began to understand the magnitude of what was happening. Let me refresh your memory, Waters said, his voice taking on a tone that Trump had never heard from him before, cold, calculating, and utterly without the warmth that had characterized their relationship for years. Waters pressed play, and Trump's voice filled the studio, clear and unmistakable. Jesse, these fucking rhinos think they can cross me and get away with it. But I got plans for every single one of them. Romney, Collins, Murkowski. When I'm back in power, I'm going to destroy their careers so completely that their own families won't recognize them. And if they think the legal system will protect them, they're in for a rude awakening. The recording continued, with Trump's voice becoming increasingly aggressive and specific about his plans for political revenge. But even more damaging was what came next, statements about election integrity that contradicted everything he had said publicly about the 2020 results. The truth is, Jesse, I know I lost some of those states fair and square, but you can't admit that to the base. They need to believe the system is rigged, or they'll lose faith in the whole movement. Sometimes leadership means telling people what they need to hear, not what actually happened. The silence in the studio was deafening. Trump sat frozen in his chair, his face cycling through emotions as he processed the enormity of what Waters had just done. Not only had his most trusted media ally betrayed him, but he had been caught on tape admitting that his election fraud claims were strategic lies designed to manipulate his supporters. Jesse, Trump said, his voice barely above a whisper, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Waters' response was delivered with the cold professionalism of a prosecutor presenting evidence to a jury. "I'm doing journalism, Mr. President. For years, I provided a platform for your message without questioning its accuracy or its consequences. But after listening to hours of our private conversations, I realized that the American people deserve to know who you really are when the cameras aren't rolling." He gestured to the recorder, which was still playing excerpts from their conversations. "They deserve to know that you've admitted privately that some of your election claims were false. They deserve to know that you've planned systematic revenge against Republicans who oppose you. And they deserve to know that the man asking for their trust has been lying to them for years." Trump's shock was giving way to a rage unlike anything Waters had ever witnessed. The former president's face was turning red, his hands were shaking, and his voice was rising to levels that would have been alarming even by his standards. "You little backstabbing piece of shit," Trump snarled, standing up from his chair. "I made your career. I turned you from a nobody street correspondent into a primetime star. And this is how you repay me." The outburst was being broadcast live to millions of viewers, creating one of the most dramatic moments in television history. Social media was already exploding with clips and reactions, but the confrontation was far from over. Waters remained calm, clearly prepared for Trump's reaction and determined to maintain control of the situation. "Mr. President, please sit down. We're live on television." "Fuck the television," Trump screamed, his composure completely shattered. "You recorded private conversations. You violated my trust. You're nothing but a two-bit opportunist who sold out the movement for ratings." The control room was in chaos as producers debated whether to cut to commercial, but the ratings were through the roof, and the drama was too compelling to interrupt. This was television history being made in real time. Waters continued, playing excerpts from his recordings, each one more damaging than the last. Trump's voice filled the studio discussing plans to weaponize the Justice Department against his enemies, admitting to tax avoidance strategies that bordered on illegal, and making crude comments about women and minorities that would destroy any remaining credibility he had with moderate voters. "Stop it," Trump demanded, lunging toward the recorder. "Turn that fucking thing off." Security guards appeared from the wings, gently but firmly restraining Trump as Waters continued his systematic destruction of the former president's political future. "This is what our viewers need to understand," Waters said, addressing the camera directly while Trump raged in the background. "For years, I've been complicit in presenting a version of Donald Trump that doesn't match the reality of who he is in private. Tonight, that ends." The final recording was the most devastating of all, a conversation where Trump had discussed the January 6th Capitol riot with shocking callousness, describing the violence as necessary and the rioters as patriots doing what needed to be done. By the time the show ended with Trump storming off the set in a fury, the political landscape had fundamentally changed. The recordings had revealed a side of Trump that even his harshest critics hadn't fully understood. A man consumed by revenge fantasies, comfortable with deception, and dangerously disconnected from democratic norms. But Trump's public humiliation was just beginning. Driven by a rage that consumed all rational thought, he spent the ride back to Mar-a-Lago composing what would become the most explosive social media post in political history. At 11:47 p.m., Trump published a Truth Social post that instantly broke the internet. "Jesse Waters is a disgrace to journalism and a traitor to America. This two-faced snake recorded private conversations like a common criminal and used them to stab me in the back on live television. But he doesn't know what he started because I've got recordings too. Years of conversations where this pathetic little weasel begged me for access, told me he would do anything to keep his show, and admitted he was lying to his own audience about what he really believed. Jesse called his own viewers dumb enough to believe anything, and said he was just playing a character to get ratings. He told me he thought the MAGA movement was a bunch of rednecks and conspiracy theorists, but he'd keep feeding them what they wanted to hear as long as Fox kept paying him. This fraud has been using my supporters for years while laughing at them behind their backs. I'm going to release every single recording I have of this backstabbing piece of garbage and show America what a fake he really is. Jesse Waters is finished. His career is over. And Fox News better fire his lying ass before I release the recordings of their executives calling their own audience gullible idiots. The truth is coming out. The post, which violated nearly every social media platform's terms of service for threats and harassment, was screenshotted and shared millions of times before Truth Social servers crashed under the traffic load. Within hours, it had become the most viral political content in internet history. The immediate response was unprecedented. Hashtag Trump Meltdown and hashtag Watersgate both trending globally within minutes. Conservative media figures found themselves in an impossible position. They couldn't defend Trump's unhinged response, but they also couldn't side with Waters without appearing to betray their own movement. Fox News went into crisis mode, with executives holding emergency meetings throughout the night to decide how to respond to what was essentially a declaration of war from their former ally. The network's relationship with Trump had always been complicated, but this represented a complete breakdown that threatened to tear apart the conservative media ecosystem. Waters himself seemed stunned by the ferocity of Trump's response. In a brief statement posted to his own social media accounts, he simply said, "I stand by my journalism and my decision to let the American people hear Donald Trump in his own words." The truth speaks for itself, but Trump wasn't finished. Over the following 72 hours, he would post a series of increasingly unhinged messages, each one more damaging to his own cause than the last. He released partial recordings of conversations with Waters that confirmed some of his claims about the host's private cynicism, but also revealed more of his own problematic statements. The recordings showed Waters making disparaging comments about Fox News viewers and admitting that he often promoted conspiracy theories he didn't believe because they generated ratings. But they also captured Trump making racist comments, discussing plans to use violence against political opponents, and revealing a level of paranoia and vindictiveness that shocked even his critics. The mutual destruction was complete. Within a week, both men had effectively ended their careers in conservative media. Waters was suspended from Fox News, pending an investigation, while Trump found himself abandoned by virtually every Republican leader as the recordings revealed the true extent of his unfitness for office. The broader implications for the conservative movement were staggering. The Waters-Trump implosion had revealed the cynical calculation behind much of right-wing media, exposing hosts and personalities who had been performing loyalty to movements they privately mocked. More importantly, it had demonstrated the danger of building a political movement around personal loyalty rather than principles. When that loyalty inevitably broke down, as it had between Trump and Waters, the resulting explosion could destroy everything both men had worked to build. In the end, the greatest irony was that both Trump and Waters had gotten exactly what they deserved. Trump had built his career on loyalty tests and personal vendettas, only to be destroyed when someone he trusted turned those same tactics against him. Waters had built his success on performance and manipulation, only to be exposed when his own words revealed the cynicism behind his act. The October 23rd confrontation and its aftermath would be remembered as the moment when the Trump era of Republican politics finally ended, not with an electoral defeat or a legal conviction, but with a spectacular act of mutual destruction that revealed the moral bankruptcy at the heart of the movement. For American democracy, it was both a cautionary tale and a moment of hope. The recordings had exposed the manipulation and cynicism that had poisoned political discourse for years, but they had also demonstrated that truth could still emerge even from the most unlikely sources. Jesse Waters had betrayed Donald Trump, but in doing so, he had inadvertently served the country by revealing truths that needed to be heard. And Trump's rage-fueled response had completed his own political destruction, ensuring that he would never again have the opportunity to deceive the American people. In the wreckage of their relationship, a new conversation about honesty, accountability, and the responsibility of media figures could finally begin. The price had been high, but perhaps the truth was worth it after all. The friendship that had once seemed unbreakable had shattered into a million pieces, taking down both men and clearing the way for a new chapter in American politics. One that might, finally, be built on something more substantial than personal loyalty and mutual manipulation. The backstab heard around the world had ended not just two careers, but an entire era of American political discourse. And in its wake, the possibility of something better could finally emerge from the ruins of what had come before.